Please come to order. Good morning. Welcome to Commissioner St. Mary's County meeting this date, Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. I am Randy Guy, President of Commissioners of St. Mary's County. I'd like to introduce the other commissioners. Sitting to my right, representing the 1st Commissioner District, which includes Ridge, Piney Point, St. George Island, Mr. Eric Colvin.
Good morning.
Representing the 2nd Commissioner District, which includes Leonardtown, Hollywood, Mr. Mike Hewitt.
Good morning and happy fall.
Here you go. Sitting to my left, representing the 3rd Commissioner District, which includes Charlotte Hall, 7th District, Golden Beach, and Mechanicsville, Mr. John O'Connor.
Good morning.
Representing the 4th Commissioner District, which includes Lexington Park, some of California, Great Mills, and some of Hollywood, Mr. Todd Morgan. Dr. Rebecca Bridget, our County Administrator, is seated at the table to my left.
Good morning.
Elisa Cassis, our Communications Director, is sitting at the table to my right.
Morning.
Amy Carter, our Video Media Producer, is behind the glass. Please turn your cell phones off or on vibrate. When you come to the presenters table, please approach by coming down the center aisle. And remember, this meeting is being televised, and you need to speak clearly and directly into the microphone for recording purposes. This time, we have the invocation and pledge by Commissioner O'Connor. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything that you provide for us. Thank you for showing us on a daily basis everything in our life that should draw us closer to you, whether it's good, indifferent, evil, it doesn't matter, but you're showing us an example of why we should draw closer to you. We thank you for those gifts that you bring upon us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please be seated. Okay, next we have the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have numerous proclamations. The first one is a Constitution Week, and that's going to be read by Mr. Colvin.
Yep. So I believe Stacy Panay, did I pronounce that correctly? Panay, I'm sorry. Please come forward. Do we have Major William Thomas? Oh, nope, that's all, right? So you're from the Major William Thomas chapter. I'm sorry.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So this proclamation reads, whereas September 17, 2021 marks the 234th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary and to patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week, now therefore we, the Commissioners for St. Mary's County, hereby proclaim September 17th through 23rd, 2021 Constitution Week in St. Mary's County and urge our citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of the Major William Thomas Chapter Daughters of the American Revolution. The DAR is a nonprofit, non-political, volunteer women's service organization dedicated to promoting historic preservation, education, and patriotism. If you would like to learn more about the DAR, please visit us on our website, dar.org. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We need to stand up, have a little photo ops just to
Quite
turn on that.
the vest you have on there with all those medals.
Thank you.
And
I've been a member for some time now.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have the Underground Railroad Month by Commissioner Morgan. Mr. Arthur Shepard and Karen Stone.
Two of our more illustrious county citizens, and
infamous.
and I left it at and they're empty. Whereas, in recognition of Maryland as the most powerful destination for authentic Underground Railroad history, and in commemoration of all those involved in the Underground Railroad, including Maryland's courageous Harriet Tubman, the brilliant orator Frederick Douglass, and thousands of freedom seekers. And whereas the acknowledgement of the roles of the people St. Mary's County played in the Underground Railroad history, and in commemoration of those involved in the Underground Railroad, the Old Jail Museum, Point Lookout State Park, Sauterley Plantation. And whereas in appreciation of the people of St. Mary's County and from those around the world who have committed to document and share Underground Railroad through National Park Service Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. And whereas the National Underground Railroad Network of Freedom acknowledges the significance of Underground Railroad and those involved for its contribution to the eradication of slavery in the United States and as a cornerstone for a more comprehensive civil rights movement that followed. And whereas International Underground Railroad Month provides an opportunity for worldwide open dialogue that illuminates the hopes that arise from freedom for all people and brings to light the injustices still occurring in our nation today. Now, therefore, we, the Commissioners of St. Mary's County, do hereby proclaim September 1st to 30, 2021 is International Underground Railroad Month in St. Mary's County and do commend this observance. Thank you.
Commissioners, you know we're delighted to be a part of this historical significance of the Underground Railroad and what it means to a free society. And we also want to also talk about Sauterley Plantation and Point Lookout State Park and the Old Jail Museum and the role there and the ongoing role that Karen Stone and the Museum Division has. And just recently, there's a new exhibit in the Old Jail Museum highlighting the Underground Railroad, so we're inviting all to come see that in Leonardtown. But once again, to be a part of something as significant as this, what it made the strength in America, we're delighted to be a part of it. So thank you for the day.
Great. Karen, you have anything? Yeah. Oh, that's fine with you. Get a little photo op. Stand, just hold the proclamation in front there. And thank you very much. Next, we have the National Senior Center Month. Of course, the senior board member here is going to read this. Ms. Laura Jennings Harris, our Director of Department of Aging and Human Services, and Brandy Tooley, Division Manager for the Senior Center Operations. Welcome, ladies. Whereas St. Mary's County is home to a growing population of adults aged 50 and older, and the Department of Aging and Human Services takes pride in offering activities specifically designed for the age group. Whereas the Department of Aging and Human Services provides a wide array of programs and services at 3 senior activity centers 5 days per week to enhance the health, well-being, and fitness of older Americans, adults. Whereas National Senior Center Month is an opportunity to spotlight the benefits of the Senior Activity Center and the value of their services to the community. Now, therefore, we, the Commission of St. Mary's County, do hereby proclaim the month of September Senior Center Month in St. Mary's County.
Commissioners, thank you for recognizing National Senior Center Month. As you know, we refer to the centers in St. Mary's County as senior activity centers. They are indeed very active and vibrant. You also mentioned that Brandy Tully is the division manager. Just wanted to point out she is new in her position. Well-deserved. She's doing a wonderful job. 2 or 3 weeks on the job.
We seniors need you.
and I need her as well. And she wanted to say a few words about Senior Center Month.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Have a lot to celebrate this month and throughout the year for recognizing senior activity centers. As you know, we have 3 senior activity centers in the county: the Northern Senior Activity Center in Charlotte Hall, the Garvey Senior Activity Center here in Leonardtown, and the Loeffler Senior Activity Center in Great Mills. Those centers are open to individuals ages 50 and above to participate in socialization, recreation, educational, health and wellness, and fitness needs. This month, we feel very fortunate that we can say this year that the Garvey Senior Activity Center opened in April after a long-awaited process of reopening the senior activity centers due to the COVID-19 closure. So we are very fortunate to have our centers up and running, meeting the needs of the community, and to have that Garvey Senior Activity Center opened. I also want to thank the staff at the senior activity centers for their hard work in opening the centers and keeping us open and keeping the centers safe for our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
stand now for a photo op here. Thank you very much. Next on our main agenda, we have the Office of the County Attorney Legislative Proposal Presentation. I've got my folder there, too.
He saw you coming and he ran.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll
Good morning.
wait 1 second. We only have 10 this year, I believe, right? We had a couple- Oh, or was it 11? 10. 10. So, the first one is the Emergency Services Support Tax, which was to request an amendment to Chapter 49, 1B, 2C of Article 19 of the Public Local Laws of St. Mary's County, and it would amend the emergency services tax per $100 to an amount to be determined by the county commissioners. What the emergency services support tax has been used for in the past is LoSAP. I think some of the emergency services daycare that we started providing, and some of the pay-go, I think, for the vehicles. And the thought was that maybe it might be needed at some point in time to, raise it. Because right now, I think it's at, what is it, 0.024 cents? And I don't know if commissioners have questions about it, or?
This is not asking for a particular tax increase. This is asking for the authority to do so.
Correct.
Right now, we don't have the authority to increase the tax.
Correct.
And all we're doing today is having discussion, am I correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
What are we going to vote on, the actual recommendation to approve it or not approve it?
That's
Not today.
next week.
Okay.
Next week, we're just going
I think
through them
you've
right
seen
now.
it 3 weeks in a row.
Gotcha. Well, it's always good to see you, Mr. Weisshaus. Tell me, I did ask for some research, and you provided it. Thank you, and Ms. Cudmore. That originally the tax was 0.16 in 2005.
Right.
And then in 2017, the previous board raised it 33% to 0.24. Now, I also saw in there that we have revenue projections this year of $1,471,811 with medical billing.
Right.
And that with that medical billing amount, if in fact that comes through, because I'm under the impression that we don't know if that's come through yet. That's an estimate.
That's an estimate. We just started in July, and I believe Mr. Walker, Director of Emergency Services, is going to come sometime in October at the end of the quarter and introduce what they have billed so far and what they have collected.
Okay, so with that $1,471,811, we were projected to have, if in fact that did come through, and that's hopeful,
Right.
a deficit of $435,608. That's what I saw from Ms.
Okay.
Cudmore yesterday. So the medical billing was predicated on a 50% collection rate, is that true?
That's my understanding.
So if
That-
we got 60% or 70%, the negative 435,608 would go away.
Well, now that we're talking numbers, I'd ask Jody to come up.
Well, I'm sorry to bring up Ms. Quasi. I know Ms. Cudmore's not in today, and I'm just trying to understand that I think the 50% rate was thought to be a conservative amount, that it could go higher, that other municipalities go higher. I know I have a sister-in-law and brother-in-law live in Baltimore, and they say they always, not that they always pay themselves, but people up there always expect to pay, their insurance companies to pay for medical services. So my point is, it seems like the 50% may be low, and that if it's higher, this deficit goes away. And where I'm going with all that is to say that why would we want the ability to change it until we see what the medical billing is doing for us?
Well, my guess to that would be, because we're one of those counties that needs to go through the General Assembly to do these changes, it's kind of like an 18-month process, right? So if we were to discover, 2 months from now that the projections aren't accurate, and then it's too late to get this year's legislative proposals set, then we would have to wait a whole nother year. So I guess it's just being proactive. And again, it's not that we would raise it, it's just that we would have the ability if we needed to.
Well, tell me this, if we
We're
want
code home rule, we wouldn't have to worry about this.
Well, that's true. But that,
Okay.
But I guess my point is that we don't have enough information to know if we need to raise it, or maybe we need to lower it. I mean, if we get a 70, 80% penetration rate of medical billing, it could potential to lower it.
Richard?
So will we need legislation per se if we wanted to lower this rate?
no, I believe it says that we can't exceed .24, but let me look real quick.
Again, I know it's discussion, and I'm sorry to,
Yeah, because what it currently is may be imposed at a rate of not more than 2 4/10.
okay, so any increase.
So we could lower it.
So
without-
any increase would require legislative approval?
Yes.
All right, well, next week's the vote, right?
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't have to do the math.
Okay, that's number one. Number two is to request, golf carts. We're back for golf carts. As you recall, the shortened legislative session last year, this was introduced, but it did not make it to the final because they were really trying to push through bills that they thought were more important because of the shortened COVID session. But this is to request that the county commissioners have enabling legislation to determine on certain county roads whether or not, people could use golf carts, right? And there's certain things that we have in the law that they can't be above 35 miles, a road that's, more than 35 miles an hour, people would have to have their license. There's certain restrictions on the type of, on the golf cart, what's needed. So, but this is, again, just carryover from last year, if there's any questions about it.
What happened last year? It just never got there?
Correct. COVID. I think it's safe to,
Say COVID again, yeah.
the General Assembly just started doing triage on, as you know, they do like 6,000 bills a year in 90 days. So they, with COVID, they started doing triage, and golf carts kind of.
COVID filed up a lot of things.
Yes, it did. And then, if there's no questions, number three, is the human relations one. And this, I think, made it through and this is to amend Section 29106B1 and 2 of the local government article of the annotated code to revise the St. Mary's County Human Relations Commission duties language. And I know Mr. Brewster from the Human Relations Commission is here. What happens, and this is a perfect example of why you try not to quote language from another law in a law, right? Because this was one that old federal language was quoted in here, and then the federal language changed, so we said, well, we've got to amend this to now include, it's about, let me get to it. It's about treating people fairly and the roles that the commission has, and it used to be without regard to race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, and sex, age, marital status, or physical or mental disability, and then, in recent years, sexual orientation and gender identity were added to it. So it was just a request to add that, and I think it passed the House, and then when I got to the Senate, it had all sorts of crazy questions, and they didn't understand, number one, which talks about how the commission shall use its influence and persuasion to direct the efforts of the community in solving problems that many times are basic reasons. The old language was racial tensions, and I believe the Senate didn't like that, so we just said tensions within the community, so it could be more than racial. And then also last year, I think somebody didn't like all the different language, so they just said all peoples instead of, all the different ones. And again, I don't know if it was COVID or just people's, unhappiness with the way it was worded, but we're just here again to try to get it through. And it's just a restatement of what the federal law is. That's quite simply all it is.
So this is codified in federal law?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, only questions I have on this is, once I saw this, I started doing some research on some human relations commissions throughout the state. Does this limit the ability for our Human Relations Commission to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the federal EEOC in order to investigate EEOC complaints locally and adjudicate them with a complaint that's filed at EEOC? So if somebody files an EEOC complaint, or can they file an EEOC complaint at the HRC, can the HRC then contact EEOC, get a case number from EEOC, investigate it at the local level so they're not burning at the EEOC, and then follow all the other steps that are in here with the non-binding arbitration, as well as filing of discrimination charges and things like that?
I thought they were around to help people file it, and give advice on filing EEOC complaints. I don't think they were there to actually, oversee them and judge them. But Mr. Brewster is here if he would like to speak to what the Human Relations Commission does.
Yeah, I'd be happy to come up here and answer any questions. Yeah, so this Human Relations Commission hasn't for probably 15 or 20 years done any kinds of complaint processing. That's something they used to do, we used to do, but that hasn't happened. Since the state kind of took control of that, the state investigates and takes complaints of unlawful discrimination in employment, housing, education, et cetera. So we don't do that anymore. Now, our authorities allow us to do that. That's still written in there. That was the original intent of the Human Relations Commission, but it's not. So we just don't have it. We don't have staff. We're all volunteer.
Right.
We don't have the resources to investigate or even assist people, really. And now if somebody really obviously we give them the toll-free number to the Human Relations Commission and the state Human Relations Commission. Yeah, I believe it's Human Relations.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so there's a mechanism in place where if it's not the county doing it, they could file with the HRC at the state level, and they have the MOU with the EEOC that they can go ahead and assume the investigation.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's what I want to make sure, that there was actually some sort of teeth within this and that the process
Certainly.
is understood.
Yeah.
Because I've watched it very successful with some cases in 3 other counties where the local HRC was able to do a lot more
Right.
for the people in the county.
Right, yes, and there are some, like Montgomery County, I believe, probably Prince George's County.
Anne Arundel.
I don't know what probably Anne Arundel have an actual staffed human relations, or sometimes it's called Human Rights Commission, Human Relations Commission, Civil Rights Commission, various names, but I think in Maryland, it's mostly Human Relations Commissions at the local level. But yeah, they have staff and stuff. They do take complaints and process them.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Brewster? Thanks for being here. And if there's no other questions, I'll move on to number 4, which was request to amend Section 20405 of the Local Government Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland to have the ability to increase the public accommodations tax by moving the cap from 5% to 7%. I don't know if there's any questions. Okay. Next is the one from Steve Walker at Emergency Services to request amendment of Section 10402C11 of Courts and Judicial Proceedings Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland to allow the St. Mary's County Animal Control officers to wear body cameras. As you'll recall, in the state law is that law enforcement personnel are allowed to wear body cameras because, it captures video and it captures audio. And as you know, there's a wiretapping law in the state of Maryland, so you need, law to be able to do that. And animal control officers do not fall under the definition of law enforcement personnel. So this would be to allow his unit to do that.
So, Mr. Walker, a couple questions.
There he is.
Didn't you already buy the cameras?
We did, but it was with a grant, and they're still sitting there, and we were prepared to give them to the Sheriff's Department, and then we've been trying this process. So we will give them to them if this, and this is my last attempt. If it doesn't pass this year, then it won't happen.
Okay, so we bought the cameras. We can't use them. If we don't get through the legislature, they'll go back to the sheriff.
Well, they'll go to the sheriff because we didn't get them from them. We bought them from the company.
Are they the same
Exactly.
Like brand and model and all that stuff, 'cause- so that,
We have a company that we had a contract with, they've agreed to stop, and they're kind of holding it in abeyance. If we do get the law passed, then they will work with us. If not, then the contract's in essence already canceled anyway, so.
how many cameras do we have?
6.
So the possibility the sheriff will get 6 more body cameras, so he can't come and say, I need more cameras, because we can see how this game spirals out of effect sometimes.
Well, I think he will probably be asking, because of 670, House Bill 670, for more cameras, based on that requirement. I don't know that every single deputy has a camera now, and 670 requires every deputy to have a camera. But, while I support this for multiple reasons, and just on the risk management committee side from Legit, the plan right now is pushing body cameras for those that are in the animal control or a very direct enforcement activity to limit the liability that is coming our way with claims on the rise, especially enforcement claims. The only concerns I do have is how is this going to tie into the probably 1,000 changes that Annapolis has made to body cameras and all the requirements that are tied to body cameras. Is there going to be an exemption that's carved out for this particular piece of legislation that says we do not need to comply with the requirements for law enforcement? Because there are extensive retention requirements, MPIA requirements. So how is that going to play in?
Well, we would, if step number one is to get the enabling, legislation, and if the county is successful in that, then we would have to create retention schedules. We would have to create, PIA. And so my understanding is, these body cameras do take some time when you get all these PIA requests, because you've got to sit there and watch it to make sure exemptions aren't. So it certainly adds work, but.
Well, good news.
I guess in Mr. Walker's behalf, dealing with pets is very emotional, and so they deal with a lot of angry and upset people. So it probably is.
For evidence.
We
as
do,
well.
but our animal control officers, they carry firearms so they can dispose of animals. Now I've had them start taking photographs of the animals in case anybody questions it, just as you said. But I think this is an appropriate use for that. But again, there are many, many disagreements, because there are times when we have to take animals. I just think it really is an accountability issue. It is a litigation protection issue. It truly is. I'm at a loss to understand why, the delegation doesn't want to support it, but I respect that, and if that's the way it goes, then that's it.
Mr. Walker, tell me, I've never understood why sometimes you have these incidents where someone has a body camera, but they don't have it turned on. I mean, we see it on TV where some police officer goes somewhere and something bad happened, they didn't have their body camera on. My point to you is this. When these control officers wear this, will they be required to turn it on? Like if they're going to a call, it would make sense that they want to turn it on either when they're there, when they get there, so they can record the whole thing. And if we have something negative go on, they can't say, well, I forgot to turn my body camera on. Is there any, protocols to that?
Well, I think that's an accountability issue. I mean, and again, in my former career as a police chief, my officers, I told them flat out that if they didn't do that and we had a problem, they're likely going to face termination. And I mean it. And I feel that strongly about body cameras. It is an accountability issue. There is new technology, and you're probably more familiar with it. When they turn their lights on, it can trigger the camera so the camera comes on. I think some of that needs to be done quite a bit more. Again, I'm a strong proponent of body cameras across the board for law enforcement, but I think anybody in an enforcement role, and these animal control officers are in an enforcement role, I think that there needs to be a body camera.
So my point is the public would know when the officer shows up, the camera's on.
They have to say that to the person.
Okay.
They have to say, you must be aware you're being videotaped. The only exception is if an officer gets out and runs an emergency situation, animal control officers should not have that scenario.
No, I understand. I guess what my point gets to be is it can calm things down a little bit if you know you're on camera, because it doesn't give you an ability to say, I didn't say that or I didn't do that. If it's on camera, it's kind of, you may control your actions a little bit more. All right, thank you.
Do we have recorded documentation of problems with animal control people dealing with,
No, and that
I mean, if you
question,
document, is there anything we can give to the delegation to say, okay, we have an increase of problems with dealing with animals and, of course, the owners and whatever, and to avoid any kind of litigation or avoid any kind of lawsuit, this is what we need to do.
so we are fortunate that we don't, but I will tell you that we've done research, and we've got a couple of videos of animal control officers across the U.S. that have been some extremely violent situations.
Sure,
And I think that when we have our meeting on the 5th, if available, I'm going to have that ready to show.
Yeah, we need some of that, some comparison to what they may undergo, just like our law officers
Yeah.
all the time. And I just want to make sure that we got something to document.
Yeah, and that question came up before, and one of the previous delegates questioned it. And again, my argument is, do I wait until I have problems to do this?
True.
Or do I take that proactive approach into building a reliable animal control unit, one that I know is held accountable? And that's really the purpose of this. Let's make sure they're doing the right thing from day one. It's transparency, 100%, so.
Yeah.
But
I'll
again, try it this year.
I'll see what I can do. I have the Board of Trustees meeting Thursday and Friday of this week with Legit. Being on the Risk Management Committee, I can always ask the full board to see if we can get a letter of support for this, because this is the direction that the Risk Management Committee is going. We are providing a lot of grant dollars to make sure that we are not in these situations for the liability end of things, whether it's a false complaint, whether it's a lawsuit going down the road, those things. And I think something else that should be made very clear so there's not unreasonable expectations here is that, one, failing to turn on is a policy violation, okay? Turning it off is a policy violation, but there's only certain instances where you can actually have the camera on if a citizen says, I don't want to be recorded. And that's already codified. It's in law. It's, I think there's like four categories, and I want off the top of my head, but most of them are felonies. So, otherwise a citizen can say, I want it off. So there's particular things that have to go into the policy. So I do appreciate you bringing this forward. I'll see if I can get that letter for this and
Good.
go from there.
That would
That'd be very
wonderful.
good.
Thank you,
Any
Commissioner.
other questions, Commissioners, on that? Okay, next.
Thank you. And next is to request, and this is also from Mr. Walker, to request amendment of Section 3702B of the Labor and Employment Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland to exclude St. Mary's County Government paramedics and EMT applicants and St. Mary's County Government Emergency Communications Center applicants from prohibition of polygraph examinations. In the Annotated Code of Maryland, there's a flat prohibition against having job applicants take polygraphs, but there are certain exceptions carved into the rule. One is for, I believe, law enforcement officers certainly have to take them, and I think Washington County even makes their emergency center applicants take them. So Mr. Walker would like to extend that to the paramedics, EMTs, and basically 911 callers?
So they would have to have a polygraph or not have to have a polygraph?
To have a polygraph.
To have a polygraph.
Okay, thank you.
So why wouldn't they want to have one?
Why wouldn't they want to have one?
Yeah.
You mean the state of Maryland, how would they have a prohibition
No, I guess
against
my
it, or-
point is, if you had somebody in that type of a position, you
So-
would probably want to make sure they're qualified or competent to be there, and if you have some reason to think they need one,
They don't want us to know their background. And to really summarize, when you talk about EMS and paramedics, this is really what you have to consider, all of you. Our paramedics, our EMTs are going into people's houses.
right?
People that are compromised, people that are laying there. If there's no one else around, these people can do what they want. Now, we'd like to think that they're all perfect people.
Sure. But again, maybe I'm not understanding you right. So you're saying they don't want to have the polygraph? These would keep these people from having it?
Mr. Walker would like the ability to use a polygraph on the job applicants.
If you feel it's necessary.
Well,
You
I would
can't
like to do it
discriminate.
for every
All of
applicant
them.
that comes in.
Okay,
applicants.
okay, good, all right.
Right now, we can't even ask them if they can do one.
No, you make a good point, and I agree with it.
Right. Now, dispatchers are exposed to a lot of sensitive information.
Sure.
Same type of a scenario. They're using information that is sensitive to the sheriff's department. We have to make sure their background is appropriate.
Thank you. If I could skip number 7, which was from the treasurer, she might be able to make it a little bit later. So if I skip over number 7 and go to number 8, is from the Office of the County Attorney to define newspaper and newspaper in general circulation. As you'll recall, we currently have an outstanding Attorney General opinion, for that, but out of an abundance of caution, I feel strongly about it, but there is a distinction between advertising county ordinances or state ordinances, and this would do away with that distinction, allow us to use it. And I don't know if there's questions on it or.
Well, I had one. So if you're a paid subscription paper, you can produce subscription numbers, that this number of people, have a subscription to my newspaper, therefore I'm a viable one. Versus if you're a free newspaper, there's no way to tell if the subscriptions are actually, if the people are actually reading it. Is that true?
Well, I mean, there's no way to tell if anybody's actually reading it.
Well, if you're paying for it,
that's always been an argument, but there is, the free newspaper, we're talking about the County Times. It's been around, I think, since 2006.
Oh, no, I read it every week.
Right. Well, more and more people do, since the enterprise has certainly gone downhill.
No, I wouldn't say that. It's changed. It's changed.
Dave Weisskopf will say that.
It's changed format.
It's changed format. It carries about 3 pages of St. Mary's County news, and people like my mother don't really care what's happening in the Charles County Planning Commission, but regardless.
As they don't care what's happening in St. Mary's.
Right. But regardless, there are some numbers you can use. I know the County Times, I think, has maybe about 120 boxes around the county, and they print about 10,000 papers a week.
I guess my point doesn't go to whether it be the County Times or, we used to have a paper called St. Mary's Today. We used to have a paper called The Beacon. We used to have, a paper called Chesapeake Today.
Right.
I mean, those circulations were obviously, they didn't make it, so they must have. So how would you determine which paper is the, okay, you read it every week, that means it's got to be done? I just don't know how you would determine if the...
Well, let's be very basic and start with this. These laws are driven by the lobbyists that the newspapers have, because it should be we should be allowed to do it on the internet for free.
Oh, good point.
So...
Not everybody has the internet.
True.
We're trying. We're trying to get rid of it.
We're trying, right?
Well, 98% of the people on it.
Yeah, I'd have to get Mr. Kelly here to explain. I think we're in the 90% on that.
I think that if we talk about access, for the whole goal here is to be able to get the information out to as many constituents as possible.
Right.
And a free paper is able to do that versus a paper with a paid subscription that people may not be able to afford to subscripe to. Is one way of looking at it.
There's arguments. Yeah. There's arguments both ways.
Is there any kind of litmus, or not litmus, but you have to have so many subscriptions. You have to have like 1,000 or whatever. Is there any?
There have been some cases that have fought on what it means to be a newspaper of general circulation, which is why they have the specific definition that they do. Right? It has to be 4 pages. It has to contain news items, current events. It has to be published and distributed from an established place of business once a week for at least 6 months. The definition currently is it has to be paid, and I think that's an outdated, moded concept. It has to be in general circulation, and so the question is, what is general circulation, right?
Okay, right, and that's probably where it goes to the crux of it is if someone's getting 20,000 of these a week being published, that would assume that has a wide audience. If someone's getting 2,000 of these a week published, that may not be as wide an audience.
Right.
So I support the legislation. I'm okay with it. But I just sometimes wonder how...
Well, there's a question, right? Is the Washington Post considered a general circulation in St. Mary's County? Is the Baltimore Sun? There's
Well, I think some of the things to look at here is we keep saying paper, newspaper, and quite frankly, it's 2021. We're talking about internet to everybody's home, and right now, there's more people picking up their phone to get access to news than there are people picking up a paper. And that's why you see that home delivery was stopped and now they use the Postal Service. And that's why you see the consolidation of a paper to 3 papers, because print essentially is dying because of the electronic age. I don't think it'll ever die, but it is going down. So I think looking at this, I want to make sure I understand that when we're talking about a newspaper in general circulation, that includes electronic media. Because when you talk about tracking, the analytics that come back on tracking these things, you can see how many people clicked the post, how many people read the article, where, what zip code. I mean, you get all that data back.
Well, the analytics they have for that are great, but I don't think they would fit under the definition of published and distributed, right? The internet. Because I
That's
agree
why
with you.
I wanted to make sure.
But, you know, to take on the newspaper lobby, maybe it's one bite at a time.
Yeah, no, that wasn't my intent. I wanted to make sure that, does it cover that or not? You know, that's just how it is. Fortunately, we have some good news outlets down here that post our stuff anyway.
Oh, sure. And like you say, you know, there probably would come a day where, you know, people that are interested in this would much rather just click on a button and see, you know, foreclosed houses or see estate sales or see, you know, register of wills type stuff, you know, or public hearings by county government, certainly. And we do have those buttons on our webpage for people, but that's what that is. And like
Any
I
more
said,
questions, Commissioners, on that?
No.
Okay, and Ms. Kelly is in.
Oh, then we will jump back to number 7, and Ms. Kelly is here in case you have questions. Very simply, the auctioneer's cost for you know, tax sale properties that come to auction is set by law. Currently, it's set at $3. It was set some time ago, and the treasurer would like it to be set at the actual cost, which is actually $10 now. And the point, what we're asking for in the law is to have it just say the actual cost. Otherwise, we'll be back, if we set it at 10, we'll be back in, you know, 2 years when it goes to 11. But it's pretty straightforward and obvious. I don't know if anybody has questions.
Well, what's the impact to the consumer? I mean, we're talking $2?
Does the consumer pay it, or Ms. Kelly?
Again, I guess it seems like such a minimal amount. Why are we even haggling with this?
Legislatively, we're only allowed to have $3, and we would like to make it the $10 or actual cost, because it can change.
Okay, let me understand that. So an auctioneer auctions a piece of property, he gets $10 for doing that.
Per property, yes.
Well, hopefully he does a bunch.
The ones that are
but
sold.
still,
If it's
like,
if it's struck to the county, they've done their service for free. So if we advertise 250 accounts and 90 of them end up being struck to the county, they earn no money for that service that they provided. But the ones that actually have an auction that gets sold to an actual bidder will, and that fee actually is passed on to the bidder.
Okay, I'll support you on this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you. Okay, so that takes us to number 9, which was to request to add a subtitle to include motor vehicle towing and immobilization on private property in St. Mary's County. And Commissioner O'Connor requested this. This is basically aimed at, I guess, what people would call predatory towing. This would basically have the commissioners set the rates. It allows, you know, I guess we always hear complaints from HOAs or communities, you know, apartment communities that get towed with no notice, right? So this would require that before you tow one of your residents' cars, you know, you put notice on the car and give them 24 or 48 hours. The same, I think, with commercial shopping centers. I don't know if there's questions about it or if you wanted to speak to it, Commissioner O'Connor.
Just a little bit. I mean, there are exemptions where public safety, law enforcement are not included in that, just to be very clear. But the predatory practices are using of spotters where, you know, they park their car, somebody else that's not in a tow truck sits out there, waits for somebody to park, quick hooks them up, pulls out, and now the citizen has to pay $280. What I've noticed, it's not, I've spoken to 2 local large tow companies who did not have direct opposition to this. Of course, they want input, but we have companies from out of county that are coming in, simply buying a lot in St. Mary's. They don't have a business license. They don't have anything that they need here to operate, and they're hooking these cars, not following the drop rules where, if you pick somebody's car up and it's not secured, you have to go ahead and pay a lesser fee. But, the problem is there's no checks and balances in this, and if you walk away from your car for 4 minutes and they hook it up and go, you're out $280, and that's pretty extensive for 4 minutes of parking your car. There was somebody down in the south end of the county that was literally loading up their groceries in an apartment complex. They came because she shut the trunk because she didn't want her groceries to get taken, and they towed her car while she was upstairs putting the groceries away. And then we had a tow truck that was doing it, and it got shot. So these things lead not only the criminal end, but a lot of other issues for citizens that are in situations. So I'm just trying to get some checks and balances on the private property.
This is quite extensive. I mean, this would allow for registration of tow companies. It allows for oversight, I believe, by the sheriff's office.
Yes.
Now, real quick, who sets the rates?
County commissioners would.
Yeah.
I think it's important that
I think what you would set, one of those, it can't be more than X number of dollars, and maybe they're less, but.
I think I get a lot of complaints in Lexington Park about this all the time. It's primarily in the apartment complexes where, as Commissioner O'Connor points out, somebody goes in to unload groceries or take some medicine to their grandparents or something, and the next thing you know, that tow truck is there towing them away, and the spotters are there. And I've talked to the apartment managers, and they swear there's nothing going on. And one girl, I think, was towed 4 different times. Now, I can blame her for not being thoughtful enough to remember what happens, but regardless, that predatory towing is just, it's getting worse in Lexington Park, and as Commissioner O'Connor points out, if somebody's getting shot at, we got enough shootings in Lexington Park as it is. We don't need to have tow truck guys now getting shut up too.
And if you have somebody sitting at the curb for 10 minutes, you can't tell me they're not spotters, right? Because,
Correct. And there's obviously a cut going back. I'm sure you don't just sit there for something to do.
So that's, that's what that one is. And if there's no more questions, the last one is number 10, which was actually a citizen proposal from a Mr. Vernon Gray that quite simply suggests that there be term limits for school board members, 3 terms, just like county commissioners.
But to clarify, that will not be voted on by the commissioners.
I'm sorry?
That will not be voted on by the commissioners, am I correct?
What do you mean, would not be voted?
We're going to vote to support that. I thought if it came from a citizen, it goes directly to the delegation.
If that's, it's your option. If that's the way you guys want to do it, that's certainly fine.
Thank you.
Any questions for everybody?
And that's it, and I took the proper amount of time. It is 9:50.
You are right on schedule.
Right on schedule. Thank you, commissioners. And,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wisecock.
Next week
Appreciate
on
it. Okay, next we go right into county administrator time.
Thank you, Commissioner President Guy. First, Commissioners, we'll look at your draft meeting agendas. Next week on Tuesday, September 28th, you have your proclamation for World Architect Day and a commendation for Paul Reed's retirement. The Office of the County Attorney will return has a public hearing at 9:15 a.m. to repeal the solar moratorium ordinance. 9:30 a.m. you're scheduled for your St. Mary's County Board of Health, and then the Office of the County Attorney returns for the legislative proposals. You also have a closed session that morning for litigation and real property. The following week is October 5th. You have 4 proclamations: National 4-H Week, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Case Management Recognition Week, and National Disability Employee Awareness Month, and your ADA Awards. You also have a closed session for personnel that morning. You adjourn and then return that afternoon at 5:30 p.m. for a public hearing from the Department of Land Use and Growth Management on the Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan Amendment for Property on Tap, LLC. And at 6 p.m. is your joint meeting with the Commissioners and the St. Mary's County delegation here in this room. For today's business meeting is item B from the Sheriff's Office with the St. Mary's County Health Department and the Sheriff's Office Detention and Rehabilitation Centers FY 2022 agreements for jail mental health services, 5-county, PATH, STOP, and SOR medicated assisted treatment agreement. Lottie Bell presenting this morning, and I believe Major Dietrich and Mary Ann Thompson are joining us virtually. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Commissioners and Dr. Bridget. Before you are the various recurring agreements for the jail mental health services and medicated assistant treatment FY22 grants. These agreements total $778,951. Funding is included in the FY22 approved budget, but included in the submission are 3 budget amendments to increase 3 of the grant budgets. Requesting your approval of the related documents, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
I move to
Questions from
approve.
anybody?
No, I move to approve the FY22 jail mental health services 5-county PATH, STOP, and SOR mat agreements between the St. Mary's County Health Department and the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office Detention and Rehabilitation Center, project number MD2282, MD2237, US 2203, MD2219, and US 2207 for a total amount of $778,951 with no required match, and authorize the sheriff and commissioner president to execute the related budget and agreement documents.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item C is from the Department of Finance with the Board of Education's FY 23 to 28 State CIP Program. Jody Kwasny, a Deputy CFO, is presenting this morning, and she'll introduce Dr. Walker and Ms. Howe from the Board of Ed. Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioners, good morning, Dr. Bridget. So I have with me Dr. Jeffrey Walker, Assistant Superintendent of Support Services, and Ms. Kimberly Howe, Director of Capital Planning from the Board of Education. They will be presenting and seeking Commissioner support for their fiscal year 2023 through 2028 Capital Improvement Plan.
Thank you. Good morning.
Walker. Good morning.
Commissioners, good morning. Dr. Bridget.
Good morning.
Thank you for the annual opportunity to meet together about our state CIP. Today, we're seeking your approval of our 2 fiscal year 23 CIP projects. In recent years, we've talked about upcoming changes in state funding and programs. We expect procedures and guidelines for some of those changes to be finalized and sent from the state over the course of this year. Ms. Howe will discuss potential impacts during the presentation, but in order to access those new additional state funds in future fiscal years, we'll have to rethink our annual state requests and perhaps increase our requests based on available state funds. We don't want to overburden the county. We also don't want to miss out on additional state funding because we didn't ask. We're going to need to navigate that balance together. So this year's fiscal request includes the same projects you saw in our long-term plan from prior years. The overall CIP budget currently does and will continue to comply with the county's CIP planning rules provided by Ms. Cudmore, Dr. Bridget, and the Finance Office. Next year's request may look different, but we always stay in touch with Ms. Cudmore and will continue to do so. Now, Kim will share details of the FY23 state CIP requests.
Good morning. Wanted to give you a little update on some activities happening at the state level. We've talked about this before. The state just completed a facility condition index and educational sufficiency rating, an assessment of all of the schools across the state. That information is still being finalized, and we were hoping that we would have it all shortly, but it looks like it might be delayed a couple more weeks. And what that information is going to be utilized by the state is to help them rank projects within the state to see where resources are needed and what funding allocations need to be, and whether they're meeting that through the pots of money that we have, multiple funding streams. And it will help us as we come forward with projects. Those FCI and educational sufficiency scores will help us with our projects because they should line up in concert with where we are with our projects. A big change this year, and it has not been completely finalized yet, but we are allowed to include it in our submission, was the state is now paying for 5% of the design eligibility at their cost share, which for us is 58%. And then they're paying 10% of the furniture and fixed equipment eligibility at their 58%. What we don't have right now is what is going to be eligible for the furniture and equipment. That's going to be provided later this year. So what the state decided to do this year was just take the full 10%, and that applied for us for Letty Marshall Dent. So they did pick up 10% of the costs. They're not going to be looking at individual items. They just did a blanket 10% with their 58%. As we go through the presentation, you're going to see that made a huge shift in the amount of money that the state is bringing to our projects.
Which is a decrease on the state level and an increase on the county side, if I'm correct.
No, so what this did, it increased the state share, and it lowered, we were able to take 5% and 10% away from the local and shift that to the
Okay,
state.
I'm sorry, thank you.
So-
Ms. Howe, just so I'm correct, nice to see you. Haven't seen you guys in a while, so nice to see you. It used to be that they only paid for construction, didn't pay any design, didn't pay any furniture.
Yes.
This is good.
This is something that the LEAs, myself included, have been very vocal about for a very long time. It is a huge portion of the project. If you're talking a large project, you can be talking $1 million, $1.5 million for design services. And while 5% at 58% of that isn't a lot, it does make
It helps.
It makes us eligible for more state funding.
Right. The glitch, if I could, the glitch in that, though, is that the pot of money at the state may or may not increase.
Yes.
So while the state's contribution to each project might increase, the overall allocation from the state may not increase, meaning they're providing more funds for individual projects than they used to, and therefore can't distribute it to as many projects as they did in the past. We'll have to see how that plays out, but that's a potential issue there.
There is that potential for the projects that do get funded. They will be funded at a higher level than they have in the past.
Good.
And we can talk about how that played into our two projects this year when we get a little farther in the presentation. So there's been so many changes, and there are different funding streams, and the state has been very reactive, and they're a little behind the curve because things are happening faster than they've been able to accommodate. So they're in the process of taking all the memos and letters that we've received over the time, and they're putting them into an administrative procedures guide that outlines all of this. It will outline the 5% design, and it will outline the 10% furniture and equipment and what they're going to pay for in future years. In addition to that, the book that we sent you has new forms. They're asking for different questions, so they've gone through several iterations of that over the summer, and it has delayed some things, but all the LEAs are working because we realize that in working towards getting this done with the state, it's going to help us in the long run. So there's a lot of moving targets. In terms of those state funding options, we have the traditional CIP. And historically, that has been between $250 to $270 million. Targeted for FY23 this year is only $216 million. And that's where Dr. Walker was saying is there may not be as much money, but the projects that do get funded will be funded at a higher level. One of the things they did is they shifted some of the traditional money to other pots of funding streams. So one that we will be discussing a lot over the course of this year is the Built to Learn Act funds. There's an estimate out of all of the county monies and how they divided it. They're estimating that St. Mary's will be eligible for about $16 million in Built to Learn Act funds. There's some steps that we have to do over the course of this year to be eligible for that. We have to develop all of our design standards so that when a project is funded through Built to Learn Act, we can provide that to the Maryland Stadium Authority. Those things then become what we build. Instead of letting MSA decide what we're going to build, we'll put in our own design standards. And that really gets into our heating and cooling units. We want to make sure that we're specifying things that we can maintain over the long run. The other piece of that is we have to develop a MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding between the IAC and the school system in terms of Built to Learn Act, and we have to have a Memorandum of Understanding between the school system and the Maryland Stadium Authority about how the project would be executed. One of the options we have is to start a project with traditional CIP funds and augment what the state isn't able to pay for to keep cash flow going with Built to Learn Act funds, which means the school system would retain ownership of that project and management of it, versus the Built to Learn Act funds being done by the MSA. And right now what they've got is they have a lot of projects that have come through this that Maryland Stadium Authority is now getting a little overloaded with projects. So we want to retain ownership as we move forward.
Tell me if I can interrupt you for a second. So it used to be that they only helped with reconstruction or construction of a new facility. And we have so many renovations that need to be done. And there wasn't as much help. So you're saying there's more help for that?
Yes.
Thank God.
Yeah, so there's three sources. There's traditional CIP, there's now the Built to Learn Act, And there's $70 million in healthy school funds that are eligible to be, they're federal and state funds that we're able to go after. And they did determine this year that renovations for systemic, for HVAC and roof, fall within healthy school facility funds
Now
approvals.
tell me on that part, I've been doing a lot of outreach with people who want to do solar in St. Mary's County, actually solar utility scale solar projects. But what came about in those discussions was people who have these solar panels on their roofs of their homes. And the thought I'm not sure of the numbers, but someone told me that the number of homes who are doing that for SMETCO throughout the southern Maryland area, who are SMETCO customers, are actually receiving about $11 million in savings on electrical bills, which is a big number. So the key gets to be, or the question gets to be, can we put solar on schools? Is it worth doing? If you're going to do these roofs, is it worth putting solar on schools to lower your load or lower your demand?
We do have a very large solar, we have one of the largest solar arrays on a school in the state at George Washington Carver.
Good.
It is a partnership that was brought in through the state. There was a Project Sunburst that we were able to do that, so they assisted with that. It does add to the cost of a project initially, and then you have to look at the cost benefit payback for that. Right now, for a residential individual, there isn't a tariff. On a school system, on the commercial, there is a tariff.
Oh, there is a tariff.
There is a tariff that we would have to work through if we wanted to do this on a larger scale, because if you generate more than you use, it gets really complicated, but there's a formula where you can be penalized for generating too much.
Well, let's hope that's not the case, but I guess my thought would be is if you could pay for the electricity in a school by the solar on the, I mean, it just makes common sense.
Yes, I mean, I can share with you, we have some really good data on Carver over the years that we've had it, that during the summer, of course, in the winter when snow could be on it, it doesn't generate as much, but in the summer, we can actually spin the dial backwards and be sending electricity back to SMECO. So it is something we can continue to look at with SMECO as well.
Ms. Howe, wasn't, two things. When we did the Carver project, wasn't that with the building of the school originally?
Yes.
So I remember the big ceremony my first term when we highlighted everything and did things really, really well. So that's good. The tariff you're discussing, is that a federal tariff or state tariff?
It is a state tariff.
So
And there was one on the Eastern Shore that was similar, and it was reversed, it was lifted.
Okay.
So it's something we'd have to work on.
Yeah, because so the irony is the state is mandating solar and wind. They want to become green, but if you can become efficient and more green, you're penalized.
In this particular instance with this tariff, it can. We do really well with the system on the rare occasion that we have an issue, and SMECO has worked with us, and it really came in, we put in a capacitor bank that regulates that prevents that from happening now.
Okay,
So
thank
there
you.
is technology that can be done to eliminate that issue, but it would be easier to get rid of the tariff.
The thing is, Commissioner Hewitt points out, as we continue to replace roofs and we keep getting beat up on the climatology people, that it would be a wise idea to find a way to have like a win-win.
Yes, and it is a current initiative of the governor to reduce energy costs across the state as well, and is looking to the school systems
That would be a good bill for the
participate in that.
legislature to deal with.
That's a good idea.
Well, I'll tell you, I got a chance to go down to Dynard and see the construction. A lot of work, a lot of moving parts, so better understanding of when you're saying roof top or roof down construction, what you're
Feeling
really
the bone,
doing.
yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, that school was gutted, and they were doing a lot of work, so I can see where the investment comes in. So it's basically, it's going to look like a new school, essentially. Great work there. Thank you for inviting me, because it really gave me an insight into what you're doing with these numbers and the magnitude of the work.
Thank you. It's hard to believe that all that can happen in 2 months over the summer, really.
I didn't believe it until I saw it, so that was pretty interesting.
Thank you for visiting. I'm sorry I couldn't be there that day, but I'm glad you were able to make it.
And it is something we've really tried to work with the state, and we push the envelope. We like to push and push and push the envelope. If we looked at this 5-6 years ago, it would have been a roof and it would have been an HVAC. They might have been done independently, but when you're working on one and the other, it is great to have that opportunity to basically take it apart and put it back together. And it extends the life of those projects. So we won't have to revisit those. We won't have to be taking and doing a roof penetration to replace something. We're really trying to give it the forethought to expand the time that we don't have to touch a building in terms of a renovation again. The interesting thing about these funding sources is they come with a little bit of different time frame, and we're very used to, we submit in October, we hear in December a first round, we hear in January a second round, and we hear in May the final round. Some of these funding streams don't have that component. Traditional CIP and Built to Learn Act funds will sort of follow that same trajectory that we've always had. With the Healthy School funds, the 70 million, those are, 50% of that money goes right off the bat to Baltimore City. So
Are their schools like so bad that they need that much money?
this really is trying to address equity in education for Baltimore City. The rest of the funding that's going to be left is a competitive application process, and what they've been doing is they've been doing them quarterly. The piece that we've been trying to explain to the state and get them to understand is that if we were to apply in January, we would have needed to have asked for the money last year so that we would have had the local match, because they all require a local match. So while it is a rolling competitive application process, it has to be part of a CIP structure, or we have to come back and ask for additional funding. So that is something we are continuing to articulate and understand, and how we look at our FY24 CIP. We want to bring in Healthy School as an option, and we will integrate that in, and that's where Dr. Walker was saying next year may look a little different. And we may be then targeting which source of funding that we're going to be going after. Another key piece right now is, and it's not a lot of money, it's $50,000 a year, but the Aging Schools Program, because of all of the other funding streams, they may not fund the Aging Schools Program. It is, like I said, it's not a lot of money, it's $50,000, but we've been able to do bathroom sets and other things along the way to keep modernizing our facilities, and that requires no local match, which is why I would like to see that one keep going, because it doesn't require a state match or a local match.
I like this too.
Question on the allocation of Baltimore City. Is that just by formula that's done? Is there any impact that we could have locally to get those funds based on the performance? And the reason I say that, I didn't understand the frustration from the governor's office in Baltimore City with the schools and the projects, the air conditioning, things like that. After I got to go over to Dinard, I started really looking at it. So I'm seeing the disparity between the two, how the projects are managed, how the funds are actually used, and used appropriately. So I think, is there anything, or is it just, it's set and carved in stone?
Legislatively approved. When some of these funding sources are approved through the legislature, they are ear tagged for certain counties. So this one does require that half of that funding go to Baltimore City, and hence the discussion that may have happened at the Board of Public Works with his frustration over the funding not being utilized effectively.
All right, thank you.
So this is our FY23 through 28 CIP request, and as Dr. Walker indicated, these projects are still in the same time frame that they were. And the chart to the right is something I really want to talk about. So the blue is the historic state funding. And that is that $5 to $6 million annually that the state has allocated. And when we get to the green, that is the funding that we are projected to need to do this list. That line that goes across is that average of about $5.5 million. And as you can see, when we get to 23 and 24, we do have some additional funding above and beyond what the state has typically allocated. The way that I address that is I try and stagger the projects so that we can meet it from a cash flow perspective, because these projects do take 2 fiscal years. I always ask for all of the state funding up front. I want to get the maximum amount I can. I want to push the envelope. I want them to know what it is our need is. But we are typically able to manage that if they don't fund it all in 1 year. We can spread it over the 2 from a cash flow perspective. When we get to FY26, that will be the first year that we'll really have to look at that, and that is that Chopticon project. I think 23 and 24, we're going to be able to cash flow it, and we're going to be fine. When we get to 26, the magnitude of that project, we will then have to start talking, because that's when we get over $7 million in total. But for FY23, we're asking the state for $7.42 million for Town Creek's HVAC and Letty Marshall Dent's modernization. And that is a project that we have continued to work with them. It started off as a small renovation, but because of our ability to do effectively the ceiling and above, and we'll be able to get some educational enhancements in there, finish some of the safety projects we have, They really are bringing a lot to the table on that project as well. In FY '24, we have a total request that year of $8.1 million. For the Great Mills partial roof, we've divided that project into 2 sections and done it over multiple years. Piney Point's HVAC systemic renovation. In FY '25, we have a request of $5.1 from the state for Green Holly's HVAC on the B side of the building and roof on A and partial B where it connects. And again, we've taken that building and we've done it over multiple years. In FY '26, we have the Chopticon HVAC systemic renovation. And you'll see that that spans our 26 and our 27 request. And in FY '28, which is the new year that we are adding and what is under development, is a Ridge HVAC systemic renovation and Lexington Park's roof systemic replacement. We have all of our projects listed out for multiple years, and each year we are able to bring in the next fiscal year.
Ms. Howell, before we leave this page, I know recently they had to replace the septic system down at Town Creek Elementary School and replaced it with an in-ground system. And the point I guess I'm getting at, there's a Metcom line that runs right down Town Creek Drive. So, I mean, it may make sense to hook up to Metcom, but I understand there's cost. My point to you is this. This infrastructure bill that's working its way through Congress and hopefully will get passed one of these days, talking $1 trillion. I mean, it's a lot of money. Hopefully some of that will trickle down to St. Mary's County. So maybe if you were in a position to be prepared to say, if we were to hook up Town Creek Elementary to the public water, public sewer system, it would cost X amount of money. We could maybe be prepared to deal with that. I still believe that when you have a school with the number of flushes going on a day, you're 1,300 feet from the water line down there and that creek back there, and that it may be a good idea for hook up to public water and sewer. And if you were prepared to, come up with I don't want to give you a lot of work because you don't work for us, you work for the Board of Education. But my point is it just seems like it's a good idea to hook up to public sewer.
And I would actually add to that, Mr. Hewitt, if we're talking about infrastructure, one of the things that I would really like to see is natural gas. We have natural gas lines at some of our schools, and the utility savings that we save on utilizing natural gas versus heating fuel is immense. So if there was an opportunity to extend natural gas to all of the schools that were in the Lexington Park, California region, that would be a significant opportunity for us.
Well, again, if you could identify those and maybe give some kind of number to them, it'd be something to think about if and when this money comes available. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So where we are now, the Board of Ed on September 8th approved the state CIP. We're here before you today based on any comments or concerns you have or changes you would like us to make. The document is due to the state by October 4th. And then we work with finance. Once you approve a document for us to submit forward, the local government assurance is due no later than November 30th. The ISC will hold hearings with the LEAs, and that's when they will announce their 75% anticipated funding on December 16th. On sometime in February of 2022, they will make their 90% recommendation, and in May, they will finalize the plan. One of the things that I should say is that they are continuing to monitor all of the cost. When we put forward a budget, we look at our prior costs, such as Dinard or Park Hall or Hollywood, and we really analyze where our bids are because we do know we pay differently. And then we compare it to what the state did, and the state has looked consistently, again this year, at a 5% cost increase. I also reach out to my sister counties of Calvert and Charles to see what their projects are coming in at, and we're continuing to monitor. What the state has indicated is that they will be reviewing the cost per square foot again in December based on what's happening in the economy. As we all know, COVID is driving prices all over the place and based on supply and demand. So if there is any change in that, I would let you know. They would automatically increase their state share in the event that they were to increase the cost. We don't have to increase our share if we don't want to, but we could then take their additional state funding. So that is always a possibility that could happen in December.
This has been a very good presentation. You have good news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Well, I'll move to approve and authorize the Commissioner President to sign the letter of support for the FY 2023 through FY 2028 State Capital Improvements Program as approved by the Board of Education on September 8, 2021, to be submitted to the Interagency Commission on School Construction in accordance with state procedures.
Second.
I have a first and second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Brendan.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item D is also from the Department of Finance with the award recommendation for inmate medical services. Brandon Hayden, Procurement Manager, Contracting Officer, presenting this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Brandon.
So we're here seeking concurrence to award inmate medical services at the detention center. And this is the in-house 24/7 medical clinic. The inmate medical solicitation was posted to the Maryland Marketplace Advantage on May 3rd, where 13 potential bidders were notified. Additional bidders were notified by the county website. Site visits were offered by appointment due to COVID protocols. 2 amendments were posted to answer questions and respond to requests for additional information. 2 bids were received before the bid opening date of June 23rd at 4 p.m. Technical proposals were then evaluated, with both bidders qualified to provide the service. Cost proposals were then opened and scored, with the low bidder receiving maximum points. As a result of this process, we are here seeking concurrence to award to Prime Care Medical Incorporated with a base year estimated amount of $1.3 million for inmate medical services, subject to receipt and acceptance of contract-related documents.
Is this a one-year contract?
1 year with 4 option years.
So 1.3 is your base, and there's an inflation factor, low bid wins.
Correct.
The only question I had, you had something here called technical advantage. What's that mean?
Technical advantage?
Well, I guess I'm looking at the vendor and it's total tech points and then technical advantage points. I mean, they're
Average.
close.
That was the average of the 3 evaluations.
Okay, but technical average, I'm sorry. The thing is, is someone got to have more technical stuff than somebody else? Does someone have more resources than somebody else?
They were relatively equal.
Okay.
Both bidders had actually, one is the incumbent and one was the prior.
Looks like the
for this
cost
service.
was the driving factor.
Correct.
Yeah, good.
I move to authorize the procurement officer to award the inmate medical services contract to Prime Care Medical Incorporated in the amount estimated to exceed $1 million, subject to the receipt and acceptance of contract-related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item E is from the Office of the County Attorney with real property for the proposed sale of the Bethune Educational Center. Dave Weiskopf, County Attorney, presenting. Good morning again.
Good morning, everyone. Here to discuss Bethune. We had an offer let me go back. We listed it for sale with Mike O'Brien, a realtor with O'Brien Realty. Got a couple of offers, and the highest one was in the amount of $350,000 from a Mark Ryan and Sam Keaton. And so I'm here today to see if the commissioners would like to accept that.
I move to approve the sale of surplus real property known as the Bethune Educational Center located at 22975 Colton Point Road, Bushwood, to Mark Ryan and Sam Keaton in the amount of $350,000, and to authorize Commissioner President Guy to sign the agreement of sale and any other documents necessary to finalize the transfer.
Second.
I have a first and second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Weiskopf.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item F is from the Department of Emergency Services with the radio communications interoperability request. Mr. Walker, Director, presenting this morning. Good morning again.
Good morning, Mr. Walker, again.
So this is part of a long project that we've been working on, interoperability. If you've seen in your packet, there was a action that you guys had taken back in 2018. Part of why this has taken so long is we've been waiting on our partners. Calvert County now has their system up, and we are beginning to communicate with them, but there are some encrypted parts that we need to be able to add some technology on our side to do that. And of course, Maryland First, we've been waiting on that system to come up, and it will be our backup system once that's fully operational, and it's not quite there. And again, there's some components of that this request today will address that. And of course, my request is for you to fund this project to be able to take care of that need.
Now, this money's coming out of your already requested amount that we've approved, right?
From the American Recovery Act?
Yes.
That's correct.
It's not new. It's part of the stuff
That's
we had
correct.
talked about.
I mean, we haven't approved this money yet.
Well, we've kind of
That's
said,
correct.
okay. I mean,
It's
we
not a
haven't,
new
like-
request.
It's not a new
Not a new-
request.
It is not new.
It's not a new request. That's probably
Right.
better.
Correct.
So
It's
it
not a
was
new-
part of the, okay,
Right.
gotcha.
I move to approve the Department of Emergency Services request to proceed with the interoperability update project using American Rescue Act funding. The projected cost of $463,888 in fiscal year '22.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have
Thank
it.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item G is the Department of Public Works and Transportation with the the Animal Shelter Project update. Mr. Diedrich and Mr. Walker presenting this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, John.
Also, we'll be joined by Drew Kelly, who's the project manager of the project. So it's a real pleasure to bring this update to you this morning. As you know, we're in the process of building an open admission, low no-kill shelter over in the First Colony area, property the county had, and we're putting, I think, to excellent use. That'll be a replacement to our membership of the Tri-County Animal Shelter in Hughesville, and each of the three counties has decided to go it on their own to improve service, avoid the long journeys and so forth, and Mr. Walker can give more detail on that if anyone's interested. So the $6.6 million design-build contract to Scheibel Construction, almost 14,000 square feet for the shelter, excuse me, the large animal barn, and canine section, and the adoption center. Excuse me.
While you're taking a drink, I just want to recognize, it looks like we have a couple members of our Animal Advisory Board here with us today, too, so welcome to you all.
They've been a great help in running ideas past them during our regular meetings. Excuse me. And we enjoy keeping them up to date on this. A few of the little twists and turns that have happened during the project. We've added sidewalk along the FDR frontage using sidewalk funds. We fortunately were able to use the existing Metcom pump station, but we had to study that. And the couple other issues have come up, but it's well under construction, and I believe we have control of the money that we need to be able to get the project done. Perhaps I better turn over going through the PowerPoint to Drew, whose voice hopefully will hold up.
Thank you, John. So I went ahead and put together a PowerPoint. Do we have the video also?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to make
Mr.
sure.
Kelly, can you speak real close to the microphone because of your
Yes, ma'am.
mask? Thank you, sir.
So the animal shelter here, we have a architectural rendering, and I'm just going to go through some of the drawings and then some of the photos that we've taken out on site while we've been under construction here for the last 6 months or so. Next slide, please. As mentioned in your memo, the site is part of the old Marcus LLC acquisition that the county acquired off of FDR adjacent to the military housing, right behind Target there. Next slide. The site plan process took a little bit longer than we were expecting. I think back around the holidays, you may have heard some murmurings about the Tier 2 watershed issue that we had also previously experienced issues with MDE at the airport on. We were able to get that resolved with about a 3-month delay, and incorporated some additional forest conservation easement into the DPW headquarters parcel of land, which is shared with the landfill as well. Construction on the site started in April of 2021, and that was really just grading, getting the site prepped for the building construction. We did have a foundation plan, which allowed us to start work before the final building permits were issued and ready to go, which were approved by the fire marshal as our last approval in August of 2021.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Yes, sir.
Soil boring.
Yes, sir.
I read it says, unsuitable soils not revealed in soil borings, currently under negotiation, $72,000.
Yes, sir.
So we built FDR Boulevard,
Yes,
and
sir.
we had a major soil boring problem down the street. And now we're here having this problem in the same vicinity. Is there a reason it's a repetitive, we just can't get the soil boring thing figured out, so we just get a bill and it just keeps adding up?
Yeah, I'll take that. We actually did do borings on the site, and either we picked the wrong spots to take the borings, obviously. So I don't know if you have any more detail on that, but
Moisture content.
essentially that was it.
Yeah.
So we repeat the same, we repeat the same things we continue to fail at.
We're going to take more borings on future projects, and we're going to go deeper. So that's our lesson learned on this. The problem on FDR was more related to the construction technique that we tried to use to solve the problem. It actually made the problem worse because we trapped water around the pipes that we were trying to put in and made the condition worse. Once we got better advice, we got past that problem, and we actually got the road open pretty quickly. But yes, it's actually a recurring problem on all our projects. The soils in St. Mary's County, highly erodible, sand and clay. The sand transfers water, and you have sand layers within the clay. If you miss that sand layer, you end up with a perched water table, you end up with mud. Your criticism is well taken, and we will be doing more borings on future projects.
May I comment
What
a
do
little
these
bit?
borings tell us? That we need to build a different type of foundation for these construction projects? When you go this boring? Is that what it's telling us?
So the soil borings, specifically for this project, I wasn't super involved with FDR, so I'm just going to kind of speak to this one. It did indicate that we were going to have about a 3,000 pound per square foot bearing capacity at the grade that we anticipated placing this building, which is, we're building a slab on grade. That's a very achievable compaction and density of the soil. When we were out there doing this grading, we ran into moisture in the soils. There's really kind of two trains of thought on how you handle soils, and I think and I am kind of speaking from my prior experience with the Navy, and being in what is commonly referred to as a Navy town, the federal kind of way of handling unsuitable soils is always to deal with it as a change order. The maybe more conservative method, to kind of speak to what you're referring to, Mr. Morgan, is to predefine in the contract that you are going to expect to have unsuitable soils to a certain depth. The problem with doing that is that if you don't have the unsuitable soils, you pretty much have that built into the contract as an expense. So you drive your construction contractor's cost up by saying, I want you to excavate. In this case, it was 18 inches down to where we were able to get the correct soil compaction and density.
I think one of the issues is, and I've had my share of soil issues where you find things buried that the farmer buried them years ago, and it ends up being organics down there. Or you just live in a community that's close to the water, and you'll run into areas where you have quote unquote soft spots. And it's just water that just for some reason comes up in that area that you can't see until you actually uncover all that property. So sometimes when you do your soil borings,
you may miss
had my share of those, is that you find out, hey, we're looking pretty good, we're looking pretty good, we're looking pretty good. But then when they clear all the land, then they say, oh, we missed this spot. So it's kind of, I guess my point is, it's kind of hard to tell.
Well, it seems to me we do the boring, you're building a building, it was 11,000 square feet. You'd bore in that area, all around it, to find out if there is such a soft spot there. And I don't know if we keep missing those for some reason. I don't know why. But I don't know. I can remember doing things myself, but it's you find a water table, then you have to either build up the property to put the building on it, right? I mean, it's just something I'm thinking about, or if you put some kind of excavation down there where you can drain it away. I don't know. And that's my so simple type problem. I'm not really an engineer, but I've done projects where I had to do those things, and they were simple to me, but the guy said, well, you got to build up a little higher because you got too much water 6 feet underground. So you got to add soil to build it up. I said, okay, that's fine. That's what we got to do. But we seem to be missing a lot of this, and then all of a sudden we're adding $70,000, $80,000 onto another test to find we moved the building in the wrong place or whatever. So this is the $74,000 estimate, right? That's this cost right now, or has that been firm?
That has been submitted by the contractor and is currently under negotiation.
Okay. Moving on. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Next slide, please.
Well, I'll just add, too, that part of that's still under negotiation because the root mass issue is supposed to be covered in clearing and grubbing.
Right.
We had a lot more root mass than we had healthy trees there, I guess. But I don't know if you could add any more to that.
Good soil and good growth.
Yeah, old growth forest that really hadn't been cleared probably in, I could easily say 100 years. I can't say there wasn't ever tobacco fields there at one point in time,
right.
Being St. Mary's County. Here are some photos of some of that site development that was going on. The center photo looks back over the military housing, and then the other two photos are kind of heading up towards the rest of the property.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please. Shelter purposes. Steve, I don't know if you want to talk about these. These are kind of taken off of the CIP
sure.
sheet.
Obviously, no low-kill shelter replaces the Tri-County shelter. And when it say replaces, that's, of course, still there. They're building their own. They haven't broke ground yet in Charles County, last I've heard anyway. Of course, it saves us from going all the way up there, but we've also tried to place it in a location that's close to retail and close to residential to encourage people to come in and do adoptions. And if they're going to drop off, then they certainly could do it, but we would try to encourage them not to. It's going to accommodate the animal shelter, large animal barn. Sheriff's Department will have a section in there. They will be isolated from the rest of the facility for their security. And of course, we're really promoting the adoption center. So.
Next slide, please. These are just some additional photos of the slab prep, getting the building out of the ground here. Next slide, please. The construction progress to date, as alluded to in the earlier slide, the MDE issues were identified in December. The mass grading plan was approved in April, and we immediately went into site clearing. The building pad was completed in June, and the slab pour was completed in August, right at about the same time we got the final building approval, so they were able to move right into framing. We are currently doing framing. There's trusses on the building right now. They're anticipating being completed with the framing by the end of October. We should have the building envelope completed by early January, and we're anticipating having the use and occupancy and contract closeout by July. I believe 2nd is the current completion date of 22, and then Mr. Walker has kind of the last line there, which I left a little vague for when it's actually going to open. After July.
Sometime in the fall, but obviously we've got to get a shelter manager hired. That's got to begin to assemble some of the pieces of that. So, I'll be coming back to you hopefully maybe December or January to discuss when we can actually begin to fund that position.
So fall of '22.
That's correct, fall of '22, when we talk about actually opening it.
I noticed the building's pretty well, it looks like it's all up and sort of, I call it weathered in.
It's getting close.
Yeah.
It has sheathing on top.
The sheathing is all on top of the building and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen all that. So you haven't got the shingles, whatever you're going to put on top.
No, that's shortly.
Because once you get it weathered in, things should move a little quicker, hopefully,
Yes,
inside.
we can get other trades in and start kind of installing HVAC and plumbing.
Maybe we can anticipate a little earlier opening.
You may. I'm not going to promise anything.
Not going to promise anything. Okay, all right, yeah, I know.
Ask me
I know how
in
you builders
January.
are. I know.
Smart man, smart man.
And then last slide, these photos were actually just taken last week. Next slide, please. These photos were just taken last week. Mr. Walker's crew has a drone, and we went ahead and put together a short video of the last
Do you have that video?
5 months of
So Mr.
progress.
Scott Raley, you all familiar with Mr. Raley? He's a drone enthusiast, and I asked him to take drone videos periodically.
Sure.
And if you'll show that, just should give a little bit of an idea of the progression. And we hope to do this all the way through to completion. He's very skilled at this.
Looking good, looking good.
Yeah.
Steve Amy did the editing on this for us. Outstanding job.
Great.
I will say I drive by there a couple times a week on FDR, and it is coming along for people who are paying attention, behind the tree line there. It looks good.
Yeah, I like the
Thank you.
tree line because actually people can't see it, and it adds to the what's going on. So it's good.
We kind of also, from the design perspective, wanted to leave a little kind of separation, act as
Good
a
idea.
sound barrier between the neighborhood there as well.
That's
So
good.
that was also kind of a consideration. that was
All
taken
good.
into early on.
And then one of the concerns when it was thought about in Leonardtown was, hey, what about those dogs barking at night? You know? Yeah, that's good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Yeah, they'll bark out towards the landfill in this case.
Got my back there, barking that way. There you go. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, John. And Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Commissioners, and this completes County Administrator time.
Okay, we'll start right into Commissioner's time and start with Mr. Hewitt.
Oh, goodness, thank you. Well, been a active week. This past week, we met with some solar people who want to do a utility scale solar in the Mechanicsville area to start with, maybe again in the Hollywood area, and maybe some more in our landfills that have been capped. Solar is the way of the future. It's interesting that the technology has come so far that they're actually able to make it very cost effective. And look, it's the future. We got mandates to have solar. I think SMETCO's allocation is 2.5% by 2030. That's not far away. And good news is it's going on. Secondly, went to the Ridge Carnival Saturday night. Had my 3 grandchildren, my 3 granddaughters, and my daughter and my wife. Wonderful time. It had a great crowd, a lot going on. Lord knows we ate crab cakes, pizza, funnel cakes, popcorn, ice cream, French fries, Lord knows. And funny thing was, we bought those bands. I didn't go, of course. My granddaughters bought those bands that they could go on the rides as many times as they want. Worked very well until the one time they went around the swings one too many times, my granddaughter says, "Don't feel too good." But it was a great time, and thank God for the volunteers and everybody down there in Ridge. Great carnival. Thirdly is St. George's Episcopal Church. They held what was called the Music from Poplar Hill, the Joe Ricks music series. Very interesting. We were invited by Jeff Clark. He's the spouse of the late Joe Ricks, and Mariana Nork. And it was amazing the quality of the music, and there was a good crowd, but they need a bigger venue. I think that with a bigger venue, they'd do a lot better. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mariana, and that was a nice event. This week coming up is going to be the county fair. Look, it's one of our traditions. Got to go. It's one of the things we're getting back to normal. Granted, wear a mask if you have to wear a mask, but hopefully you've been vaccinated. And if you've been vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. But a mask is your choice, so please do what you're going to do. Now, lastly, a memory came up on my Facebook page yesterday about Great Mills High School from 1997. And it was kind of interesting that 25 years ago, there was the first elected school board in St. Mary's County in over 100 years. One of the people, Mary Washington, is still on that school board to this day. She's done so many terms, and she's done a wonderful job. But back then, I was a member of that board that was elected, and the point was we renovated or built 7 schools. Now, during that process, we were introduced, or actually we went around and I took the initiative to go to every single school, meet every principal, every faculty, because I thought it was important to them to know who we were and us to know who they were. But I met a wonderful woman. She was the principal of Carver Elementary, and her name was Janice Walthour. And her sister, Alfreda Mathis, she was the principal of Lexington Park Elementary. Here are these 2 schools right next to each other, and they talked about the common challenges of sometimes someone would move and be in the Carver district and then a month later move and be in the Lexington Park district. But these 2 ladies were wonderful, wonderful educators, principals, teachers, family members. Janice Walthour turned 75 years old today. It's a great, great event, 3/4 of a century. I want to say, Janice Walthour, happy birthday. Thank you.
Eric.
Very good. We had a really large consent agenda today. We don't usually have one that's quite this large. There's our consent agenda always has the minutes from the previous meeting, and then it'll have, a couple items that we all agree upon that don't really require discussion, usually a letter of support or something along those lines. And I want to especially thank our county administrator Commissioner President Guy, our Finance Department, our Emergency Services Department, because they did a very fast turnaround for the Ridge Volunteer Fire Department for a waterway improvement grant for something that Ridge is working on down there. This is a really good thing. So I want to also give kudos to the Ridge Fire Department for doing this. They've got a multi-phase plan. They're purchasing some boats, or a boat that they can use in inland waterways, and it's going to help keep the area safer there, and it's going to help the whole county. It's just a really good thing. So that was part of our consent agenda today. It didn't get any discussion during the meeting, so I wanted to just highlight that, bring it out, because it's a really important step to help protect the citizens of this county. So thank you to them. This afternoon we have the State of the County address, and that's always hosted by the Chamber of Commerce. So thank you to them for hosting that, and it'll be a good time. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'll see you all at the fair this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a beautiful weekend. It's going to be a great time at our county fair. Thank you.
John.
Thank you, sir. I follow up on the fair. Looking forward to the fair parade. I think it's going to be great. I think the fair is going to be amazing. Fair parade, I don't know. It's just one of the few parades. It's just a great time being a part of that, and the Veterans Day Parade in Leonardtown. So I always look forward to that. We haven't really touched on it, but there was another letter in there from the commissioners about the state in the consent agenda about the redistricting maps. So Senator Bailey, Delegate Morgan, they put out an email about it. Golden Beach, Dale put out a email about it. They had a hearing last night. I don't believe those are going to be the final maps. I believe that they are the first look at what has been proposed, and that's why the public input is so important. However, I will tell you that I don't believe St. Mary's County should be in any way represented by a delegate from Anne Arundel County or a delegate from Charles County, or the possibility of a delegate from Prince George's County, let alone a senator from Anne Arundel County, based on how it actually lays out. So it's important that the public pays attention to what's going on here with redistricting. It's very, very important, and the fact that there's a tiny little carve out and it's taking away some of the biggest economic drivers that we have, and pushing it to controls outside of St. Mary's County, like the airport, innovation. It's just something to really pay attention to. Some great things. We have an aquatic center right here in Leonardtown, College of Southern Maryland. Thanks to Art Shepard, his team, my colleagues here, CSM, for making this happen. That is a huge, huge impact for the county. I mean, it's a beautiful facility. It would have went to waste had we not come to an agreement with CSM. So now we have that facility there. I'm hoping to see it used frequently. Yeah, it truly is great. There's a video up. Please take a look at it. Chaptico Park. Again, the bathrooms at Chaptico Park, based on some funding that Mr. Shepard was able to get. And finally, coming to a close, started this in 2014 with the previous Parks and Recs director, Dorsey Park. Amazing. We got the field fixed, we got the irrigation, we got Bermuda, we got parking, and finally, the bathroom is being done. So it's taken a while, but 7 years, but we're here, and it's done. And these were requests from all the leagues, so I hope you go out, take a look at it. I know the playing has been a lot better. And lastly, but not least, to our fire departments and EMS. I've gotten your calls. I'm sure others have gotten your calls. Nobody's not looking at your funding requests. What I have to say, at least in my perspective, is it's fiscally responsible not to award all the money at once. You know, this $22 million, and while I don't believe the bottom is going to fall out, it's always wise to ensure that you're not just spending it like there's not a care in the world. So evaluating each project as it comes in is very important. That is something that has to be done. It doesn't mean you're not going to get the funding. If there's some sort of amendment that needs to be done to a project you have based on something, please submit it. And we can work from there. But there's a plan. And if you're doing your budgets, I ask that you just finalize your budgets. You know, this is money that you would have never accounted for, and, you know, in the first place. And we are working through this. You're not the only ones. Every department in the county is dealing with it as well. But you just got to make those
the right decisions on this type, and it's outside the normal process. So I appreciate the patience and the concern that you showed. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. To highlight what has been said, the fair this weekend, it'll be a lot of fun. I'm not sure if it's going to rain. I'm not sure if it's going to be a dust bowl. I was watching the weather forecast. It seems to go back and forth. So usually we sometimes got a really good year, a wet year, a dry year. So just be prepared for the weather. As the commissioners have pointed out, we had the redistricting hearing last night, and Senator Bailey, Delegate Morgan, and I all testified to that board. It was pointed out, the way this new map, which we hopefully will agree on will not take place, divides St. Mary's County between 4 counties: Charles, St. Mary's, Calvert, and Anne Arundel. And it's very disproportionately done across the board, really to the detriment of our county. And as Senator Bailey and Delegate Morgan put out, you better be paying attention, because it's very conceivable that someone in Waldorf can be representing Ridge and Valley Lee, and somebody from Anne Arundel can be representing Hollywood, Lexington Park, California, the airport, the higher ed center, etc. So how they came up with the map originally, I have no idea. So if you have not seen it, please look on the Facebook posts that the 2 of them have put up. There's a form letter you can sign and mail in, and just make sure they're aware that, this is very detrimental to the county. And please bear in mind, this will last for 10 years. 10 years. And that will be what you will have to put up with if these maps go through as they're currently being portrayed. Lastly, as Commissioner O'Connor said, the American Rescue money. We're well aware of what's going on out there, folks. The money will be distributed. I think a lot of the money for the first year is just about used up, and it's been allocated according to a whole bunch of things that we are hearing about based upon priorities. As Commissioner O'Connor said, you have to build a budget. Please build your budget. This is just free money that can come in, and just that we're not thinking about what you want or what you're going to need. But patience is good. As was pointed out, we have an infrastructure bill that's waiting in the wings. You got another $3.5 trillion one waiting out in the wings, and everybody's fighting in Washington. I'm not sure what's going to come out of that. So when it does eventually trickle down, we'll know better. But trust me, we're not going to forget you and what you're asking for. But there's only so much money that goes around for everybody. And with that, thank you very much, and see you at the fair.
Good. Thank you all very much. Yeah, to get on the infrastructure bill again, the money we have right now, we have until 2024 to commit it.
Correct.
And then 2026 to spend it. Correct. So we got to be patient about this and how we distribute it. And so all of you don't get concerned about you're not getting your fair share of it, get a part of it, because it will be. We're doing the best we can to fair share it out. So please pay attention to that. I do think the redistricting that we're talking about that just came about is very important, and that the citizens of this county should be really concerned and go on Matt Morgan's Facebook or Senator Bailey and see this. And Senator, at least Delegate Morgan is pretty well lined up how you can address these committees on the redistricting, and it would be very important. I got to agree with the other commissioners here. I don't really want a senator from Anne Arundel County representing my county. They just don't have that knowledge of our infrastructure, our economic development, etc. They just don't have it in mind. So please pay attention to that. And also our redistricting in the county is going on right now, the countywide. So I think they got a next meeting here next week here, the next one.
Next week.
The next meeting, I think it's next week. Maybe it's just tonight, isn't it? Tuesday night. They got a meeting tonight. So, I mean, so pay attention to that, too. It'd be wise for you to have some information on that. Also, of course, I'm passing on to Senator Connor. I had a lady approach me at the Fox 5 trip. A young lady wanted the skate park at Chaptico Park.
Skate park?
Skate park, yeah.
That fits right in with the BMX.
So I told her to send a letter to either you or to CSMC about this skate park. A couple of good-looking young ladies, and I go, y'all skateboard? Oh, yeah, we love it. And I said, it's probably a very expensive venture, but we'll look at that. Go ahead and send us a letter. And I didn't get their names, John, but anyway, they're supposed to be sending a letter to us about the skate park they want.
All right.
Just to let you know.
I like it.
Anyway, with all that said, everything was pretty much said about how things are going, a lot of stuff going on, and I also want to put a plug in for the Blessing of the Fleet, which is coming up very soon and on 2 and 3 October. That's also been a very important thing to bless the fleet for the crabbers and the oystermen and the clammers, and of course we got a lot of anybody bring their boat down and get it blessed at the time. So put a plug in for that also. With that said, we have decided to defer the one and only personnel issue that we had for closed session, so we're not going to have a closed session today. That'll be deferred until a later date. With that said, closed.